The beginning of the 21st century will be remembered, not for military conflicts or political events, but for a whole new age of globalization, a flattening of the world. The explosion of advanced technologies now means that suddenly knowledge pools and resources have connected all over the planet, leveling the playing field as never before. Along with customary classes on subjects such as finance, accounting, and marketing, today's MBA students are enrolling on courses for environmental policy and stewardship. Indeed, more than half of business schools require a course in environmental sustainability or corporate social responsibility, according to a survey of 91 U.S. business schools, published in October 2005. The brain is divided into two hemispheres, called the left and right hemispheres. Each hemisphere provided a different set of functions, behaviors, and controls. The right hemisphere is often called the creative side of the brain, while the left hemisphere is the logical or analytic side of brain. How quickly is the world's population growing? In the United States and other developed countries, the current growth rate is very low. In most developing countries, the human population is growing at a rate of 3% per second. Because of this bustling growth rate, the human population is well on its way to reaching 9 billion within lifetime. Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity. Tesla actually worked for Edison early in his career. Edison offered to pay him the modern equivalent of $1 million to fix the problems he was having with his DC generators and motors. Tesla fixed Edison's machines, and when he asked for the money he was promised, Edison laughed him off and had this to say, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." Imagine living all your life as the only family on your street. Then, one morning, you open the front door and discover houses all around you. You see neighbors tending their gardens and children walking to school. Where did all the people come from? What if the answer turned out to be that they had always been there, you just hadn't seen them? The trip for the professional training will start soon, so pack the items before we leave. The trip for the professional training will start soon, so pack the items before we leave.
The competency of the language in the assignment is to use more formal words. The competency of the language in the assignment is to use more formal words.
In the dark, before the dawn, the plane was assembled. In the dark, before the dawn, the plane was assembled.
Lots of students had money and passports stolen, especially at night. Lots of students had money and passports stolen, especially at night.
It's just a feeling having tried something new and succeeds. It's just a feeling having tried something new and succeeds.
Unfortunately, their immune systems were not strong enough to fight off common earthly bacteria. Unfortunately, their immune systems were not strong enough to fight off common earthly bacteria.
Our university accommodation has a volleyball team for students to join in. Our university accommodation has a volleyball team for students to join in.
The books reserved in the library can be borrowed for up to 3 hours. The books reserved in the library can be borrowed for up to 3 hours.
The undergraduate students are teaching with a rigorous course in our psychology department. The undergraduate students are teaching with a rigorous course in our psychology department.
We are so dependent on computer that we cannot live without it. We are so dependent on computer that we cannot live without it. The following graph gives information about vocabulary for different age groups. The items include age group of 0 to 10, 10 to 20 and 20 to 30 years old. According to this graph, in 20 to 30, the value of the vocabulary is around 37,000 and that of 10 to 20 is lower, which is around 22,000. You can see from this graph that the lowest value of the vocabulary is in 0 to 10, which is 8,000. In conclusion, the higher the age, the more the vocabulary they have. The following graph gives information about commuting time in different regions in Britain, 2014. The items include London, Yorkshire, South East, North West, and South West. According to this graph, in London, the value of the commuting time is around 107 minutes, which is the highest value. You can see from this graph that the second highest value of the commuting time is in East of England, which is 71. The lowest value of commuting time is in Southwest, which is around 56. In conclusion, London has the highest value of commuting time. The following graph gives information about age group in China. The items include male, female, age group, and the population. According to this graph, in male, the population of age from 20 to 24 is around 52 million, and that of age from 0 to 4 is lower, which is around 45 million. You can see from this graph that the highest population of age from 80 to 84 is in female, which is around 10 million. You can also see from this graph that the lowest population of age from 90 to 94 is in male, which is around 0.5 million. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following image gives information about how a tomato seed can become a tomato plant. It shows how the process is done. The steps include tomato seed, a young plant, a mature plant, a flower, and a fruit. According to this graph, the first step is tomato seed, which is in a tomato fruit cut in half. According to this graph, the second step is to become a young tomato plant, which is green. You can see from this graph that the third step a mature tomato plant with green leaves rooted in brown soil, followed by a flower as the fourth step. The final step is a red fruit that comes out of the flower, and the cycle will start over. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The graph gives information about the Sweden government budget in 2018. According to this graph, expenditure SEK is 999 billion, which is in a blue bar, followed by revenue SEK of 1043 billion, which is in an orange bar. According to the center of the graph, it shows that surplus is plus 44, which is in a white circle. In addition, there is a white cube in the lower left corner, and there is a white 2018 in the upper left corner. According to this graph, the background is dark blue. In conclusion, this graph is about Sweden government budget in 2018, and it's very informative. The following graph gives information about stuff in the rubbish bin. This is a very beautiful picture, and it shows a number of things. According to this graph, at the upper area, there is a lot of acceptable food scrap including egg shell, fish bone, soiled paper, noodle, plate scraping, vegetable and orange, surrounding a rubbish bin. The color of the bin is gray. You can see from this graph that, at the lower area, there is a lot of unacceptable items including disposable lunchbox, diaper, animal waste, plastic container, flower pot. The color of the lunchbox is white, and the color of the flower pot is brownish red. You can see from this graph that, at the background, there is comparison between acceptable and unacceptable items in the rubbish bin. In conclusion, this picture is very informative. The following graph gives information about media in UK. The items include internet, TV, newspaper and radio. According to this graph, in internet, the value of 2005 is around 60%, and that of 2003 is lower, which is around 50%. You can see from this graph that the highest value of 2001 is in radio, which is 63%. In conclusion, newspaper has the lowest value in 2005, about 3%.
What nutritional guidelines should we be following?
Well, probably the best source of nutritional guidelines are those that are issued by the American Cancer Society or the National Cancer Institute. And the American Cancer Society, for example, offers 4 really basic, simple nutrition guidelines. The first guideline, which in my mind is the most important, is to choose most of the foods that you eat from plant sources. And we can talk more detail about that in a moment. The second guideline is to limit your intake of high-fat foods, particularly from animal sources. The third guideline is to be physically active and achieve a normal, healthy body weight. And the final guideline is to limit consumption of alcoholic beverages if you choose to drink at all.
So, Susan, one of the things we always hear about from the American Cancer Society is this 5-a-day recommendation. Maybe if you could explain to our listening audience what that actually means.
The 5-a-day recommendation is a very simple way of communicating the message to increase consumption of these plant foods. And what 5-a-day means is 5 servings per day of fruits and vegetables in total. And some people misunderstand this guideline, and they may think it's okay if I have 5 glasses of fruit juice a day and I've met my 5-a-day guideline. But the goal is really to choose both fruits and vegetables as part of the 5-a-day guideline, to vary the fruits and vegetables that you eat on a daily basis. And that alone is a very major step forward in terms of reducing your risk for cancer.
The lecture was discussing the best simple nutrition guideline, which is offered by American Cancer Society. First guideline is eating more plant sources food, second is limiting animal and high-fat source of food, third is keeping normal weight by increasing physical activity level, and fourth is limiting the alcohol and beverage consumption. She also added some information about 5 serving of fruit and vegetables should be consumed per day.
Article that you wrote that I just read, you said you wished you could take everyone back to decades ago to look at the Florida Keys.
50 years ago, think about how much change has taken place in that short period of time. We have managed to consume on the order of 90% of the big fish in the ocean, the tunas, the swordfish, the sharks. They're mostly gone. Until recently, people have had the belief that there isn't much we puny human beings could do to change the nature of the ocean, but in fact, we have, not just because of what we've been taking out, and the destructive means often applied to take fish and other creatures from the sea, but also what we're putting into the sea, either directly or what we put into the atmosphere that falls back into the sea.
So if you were going to give a grade on the health of the oceans today, what would it be?
Well, it depends on which aspect. Across the board, the oceans are in trouble. It's hard for me to assign a specific grade, maybe C-.
The lecture was discussing about the article that clarified what happened in the ocean and seas during the last decades. She also explained that we managed to consume almost 90% of big fish like swordfish and sharks during the last decade. She also mentioned that human changes the nature of the ocean, and now they try to back the atmosphere to the oceans. A specialist who repairs leaking water pipes is called as A specialist who repairs leaking water pipes is called as
What shape has 4 equal sides and 4 angles, and each angle is a right angle? What shape has 4 equal sides and 4 angles, and each angle is a right angle?
What thing shines at night in the sky and uses its own brightness? What thing shines at night in the sky and uses its own brightness?
In statistics, what is a circle divided into many parts called? In statistics, what is a circle divided into many parts called?
What do we call a mass of snow, ice and rock that falls down the side of a mountain? What do we call a mass of snow, ice and rock that falls down the side of a mountain?
What subject will be enrolled in university if someone wants to study human brain and experience? What subject will be enrolled in university if someone wants to study human brain and experience?
What do you call the government where the power is concentrated in the hands of one person? What do you call the government where the power is concentrated in the hands of one person?
What do we call the extra performance or show that an actor or actress gives? What do we call the extra performance or show that an actor or actress gives?
How often does February have an extra day? How often does February have an extra day?
What is a painting of person head usually called? What is a painting of person head usually called?
Where would you find an urban area, in a city or in the countryside? Where would you find an urban area, in a city or in the countryside?
What do we call it when the moon completely blocks out the light from the sun? What do we call it when the moon completely blocks out the light from the sun?